And I'd like to start with a question that came in on our Facebook, because, you know, there are many different ways that you can connect with us on the live feature on the Facebook. People are tweeting with us now. That's wonderful. Somebody wrote in earlier this week and said, "Hi there, wondering if you can help me, please, if you could put this on your news feed. My 4-year-old has behavioral issues and other issues. School and other services now think he has signs of autism. What are the signs that they will look for during an evaluation, please? And thank you." And I did notify this mom that we were going to be answering this question live this morning, and she did write back and say that there are already some milk issues, that it appears to be a milk allergy as well, so that they are having some food issues and things of that nature as well.
That's great. Yeah, I find that it helps sometimes with our kids when you completely remove the child from casein, so basically all dairy. Because it will, I mean, I find that our kids sort of wake up a little bit, so that might be what you're seeing. But to answer the question here, what you look for, I think the red flags for teachers and people who are not necessarily trained to diagnose initially. So the red flags are things like the child generally does not interact with other individuals. So if your child is 4, what they're probably seeing is that your child is not necessarily playing with other kids, or if he is playing with other kids, then he's doing it in a different way than all the other kids. In other words, he's possibly getting very angry if the other kids don't do things his way. You know, so maybe being aggressive towards others because he's angry. You know, this parent wrote that there are some behavioral issues. One of the things I want to make sure everybody realizes is that behavioral outbursts are not part of the diagnosis. They're kind of a side effect. And I find that our children have behavioral issues mostly because they're frustrated. They don't have the ability to communicate things the way another child would, and therefore they express their emotions through behavioral outbursts. So a child might push or hit another child, and the only reason they're doing that is because they don't understand why the other child is not allowing them to have a turn or is not giving them the object they want. They don't read the social nuances correctly, and so they, instead of saying, "Hey, can I have a turn?" or that really upsets me what you just did, or those types of things, they'll hit or push. So the behavioral stuff is kind of a side effect, but nevertheless, it is a red flag in terms of a teacher or someone else will think, "Oh, why is this child so aggressive towards others?" or "Why is this child so unhappy?" or so on. So those are the things that may have led to someone being concerned. The key symptoms of autism are, we always have some form of language delay or difference. If you don't have, I mean, the diagnostic criteria right now, the DSM-5 does not really require the presence of a language deficit. That's only because Asperger's has been joined in. So if there isn't any kind of language difference or delay, then you're more likely looking at an Asperger's type of diagnosis. But generally, there's a pretty significant delay in language communication and so on. Nonverbal communication is very significantly affected. So the child is, let's say, not giving eye contact when they should, or not appropriately, not maintaining eye contact with the right people at the right time and amount. Maybe standing too close or not close enough, just sort of social nonverbal behavior is a little bit off. Social in general will be affected, so the child will have a lot of different types of social delays, such as not knowing how to interact with another child or with a group of children or with an adult, or not knowing when it's appropriate to behave in a certain way. So let's say the child's behavior might stand out when they're in a classroom. The child might be yelling out questions or something socially inappropriate. Those are some of the key things that you look for with autism. In addition, there might be some ritualistic, repetitive things present. Maybe, not in every case, but there may be. For instance, the child might insist on routines or insist on things being a certain way. Environmental changes or transitions might disturb the child. When you have all of these things together, the child ends up being kind of isolated, or perhaps I would say some of the kids just isolate themselves because it's easier, and some of the kids still continue to try to interact, but their interactions are so odd that they're perceived as being very different from others. So, that's essentially kind of the description of what you end up seeing when a child is first being, I guess, flagged for autism. And, don't let it scare you, because don't let anyone get you defensive in any way, or make you defensive, or injure you by saying, yes, I think your child has a diagnosis or has autism or is on the ASD spectrum. It's extremely hurtful, I know. And sometimes our first reaction is like, who are you to tell me there's something wrong with my child? But once you've gotten past that injury, then just kind of look at the facts and try to recognize that all you're being notified of is that maybe your child needs help. Mm-hmm. And there's so much that can be done now. So take it as your own red flag, I suppose, and just look at what you can do to help your child. The diagnosis of autism, it's not a life sentence. What it is just hey, pay attention to, is your child developing social skills and language and communication as well as he or she should? And if not, let's try to help your child to get there.
And I just want to tag on as a parent who's gone through that process, that when somebody first says it, it feels like your world is over.
Absolutely.
But as you move closer to understanding what's going on with your child and the help that's available to your child if they get a diagnosis, there's a shift that happens with most parents where we end up going to the appointment and hoping for the diagnosis because we know we'll get access to the help.
Absolutely.
And that's the thing to hold on to, is that there is help for your child. Whether they get the diagnosis or not, there is help for your child. But honestly, the school will help you to get to the help, and more people will help you to get to the help if you get the diagnosis. But either way, there is help for your child.
And of course, the diagnosis is necessary if you want to get funding for the help.
Exactly.
So there's positive things about the diagnosis. But Shannon, like I do, unfortunately, a lot of people come to me for secondary diagnosis, mainly because they question someone else's diagnosis. And occasionally I've been able to say, no, absolutely not. Like there is no even sign of ASD here. So, but a lot of times I have to confirm the diagnosis or actually give a new diagnosis. And it's shattering for families. Yes. It's still very, very scary, and I like to be the person there because I can hold on to the parent for a long time, for 2 hours, and kind of explain to them everything.
Yeah.
And I can't do that for this parent who's writing in right now. So I'm just hoping that it's scary, but you will get through it and you will come out stronger on the other end, no matter which direction it is. And even if you don't get a diagnosis, just pay attention to whatever area your child may need additional support in.
Absolutely. Wonderful, wonderful advice. And stay tuned with us and ask more questions when you feel the need to. We thank you for asking this one. Now, last week we had a mom who was writing in with some difficulties in reading with her son, that he was looking for constant prompting from mom when he was reading words. Dr. Granpeesheh had some advice for her, and after Dr. Granpeesheh had left, there was a follow-up from the mom. She says, Dr. Doreen, does it mean I should have him read only words that he knows for sure? Right now he reads a sentence that has both sight words and words that need to be spelled. I'm assuming that you're talking about sounding a word out when you say spelled. He ends up spelling both the types of words. Maybe I should just make him read sentences that have known sight words for now and thanks a lot. Because you had asked her to have him put his finger on the word and gradually fade her hand out. So should she only be using words that he already knows at this point?
I think initially you should. Initially you should just be using words that he knows, because your goal is you have to do anything you want to do, you have to do one at a time. And your goal right now is just to fade your physical prompt out. That's your goal. So make it very simple. Make it words that he already knows. And what you're teaching him is for him to touch each word, right? So that then you can fade that out and then he can fade that out gradually. But initially you're just teaching, moving your hand away and replacing your hand with his hand. That's your goal. Now, so in order to not, cause any other difficulties, then yes, just use words that he already knows. Once he's gotten to a point where his hand goes on every word, then you're going to have to bring in new words that he doesn't know. And then you may encounter the problem of him starting to sound every letter out again. You may do that, but that's when you indicate to him that he has to do it in his head. So this is actually it's a different problem altogether than what we talked about last week. Last week we were talking about his dependence on your prompts. Now what we're talking about is our kids kind of coming to the acknowledgement or the realization that thoughts are different than words. And you can just start teaching him that separately and just saying, think of a word, make sure it's in your head and you can hear it in your head, and then say the word. And thinking versus saying is actually such an important thing that it's one of our lessons. It's a lesson we have in skills. It's called think versus say, and it's very important. And so once you've taught that, then when he starts to sound things out, he can sound them out in his head as well.
Okay, I just want...
Unless it's okay for him to sound them out verbally.
Okay, I just want to go back on something you said, because I think it's so key to where we all make mistakes. That only trying to do one thing at a time and having one target at a time. We live in a world where teachers are told to make webs and to layer learning and do 8 things at the same time. Mm-hmm. And that's all very well and good later on when people are at a certain level and can handle that. But so often I find as a parent, and in the world that we move in, and I hear other parents talking about this too, we kind of forget, and this will make you shudder as a behaviorist, but we forget what the target is.
Absolutely. We get so stuck on a whole bunch of different things.
Yeah. So we would think we're sitting down to read a book with our child, that what we're working on is teaching reading. Mm-hmm. But what you're saying is to take it back a moment, and what we're just going to focus on is not teaching reading for this 5-minute period of time or 1 hour period of time. We're going to focus on fading a prompt.
That's exactly right. Thank you for saying it so well. That's absolutely right. You cannot, it's kind of like putting a bunch of foreign material in front of someone, like 10 words, and then expecting them to understand the entire sentence. You don't do that. You just start with one word, and even with one word, like for instance, if he's sounding out, after you've finished all the prompting stuff, what you need to do is make sure he knows each individual letter's sound prior to expecting him to sound out a word. I mean, everything has to be broken down to the minutest detail and focused on one thing at a time. So yes, please focus on the prompting, fading the prompts first.
But for everybody watching, this is a mistake that we all make 32 times a day at least with something that we're doing. I think, we talk about this with compliance a lot.
Right.
That if we're teaching compliance, that's the target, then that's the thing you pay attention to, not anything else.
Nothing else.
Really hard
for
us to keep that clear, but I think it's one of the things that if we can get clear on that, and if we can convey that to other people working with our children, I see that was a big shift for me when I got that. I was like, wait a minute, what's the target? Then that's the thing we focus on, and we don't worry about everything else.
Exactly. Very important.
Pivotal for me when I learned that. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question. Can an adult with mild mental retardation be assessed for autism?
Yes, absolutely. But you have to understand that it is unlikely. I mean, in the United States at least, in other countries I find it still occurs, but it's unlikely that an individual would have autism and not have been diagnosed and they're still an adult. Asperger's, yes, that's possible, because with Asperger's, it's you can go to a very mild level, and in some cases, individuals with Asperger's are highly functional and successful. They just have some internal social issues that lead to depression and anxiety. But honestly, with autism, I mean, I remember diagnosing a child who had pretty significant autism at 7 one time, but he was from another country and had just been very, very sheltered and protected. And I found it very unusual. So, adults with mild mental retardation may suffer from autism as well. I realize that the question says, can someone be assessed?
Yes.
And I think that's kind of important. There's a lot of assessments. So just to answer the question better, there are standardized assessments for autism and can be applied to adults and can be applied to adults with mild mental retardation. So yes.
Okay, great. I am going to move on to a question here about a 2-year-old boy who is speaking an echolalic language, and how long will this go on?
It will go on until you take the echolalia and turn it into something else.
Okay.
So echolalia is a wonderful thing. We all get excited when someone is echoing because it's the beginning of imitative speech. Echolalia, for those who don't know what that is just imitating what you hear, echoing, essentially. And echolalia is one of the things we try to develop early on. So it's very good. But it will remain in that format unless you shape it into language. So your child's 2, he is echolalic, he is the prime candidate for good ABA. Please get him in an ABA program, and imitating sound will now be shaped into asking for things. And that'll be the first, you go from echoics to manding, which is requesting things, which is very appropriate to his age. So please, don't be discouraged or scared. Move forward and get into an ABA program.
Okay, wonderful. Next question is from a 17-year-old who identifies himself as having autism. He says, but my parents don't listen to me. They think it's nothing. What should I do?
Let's identify what you would like them to do. If they listen, what would you gain from that? So please write back to us and say, what do you mean when you say they don't listen to you? What if they did listen, what would change? What are you hoping to change by getting them to listen? And then I can guide you a little bit more on how to make that happen.
Okay, and feel free to send me your email address or a way to get a hold of you. We won't share that with the audience. Okay, moving on. Hi, Shannon. I live outside the U.S. with limited ABA resources, so I teach at home with books and resources like your show. My 2.5-year-old daughter did not learn to speak until she turned 2, when her epilepsy was finally put under control. While she's learning vocabulary quickly from pictures and started to form sentences, she often uses words out of context. An example, yesterday I was teaching her to pretend to cut food, and she said, baby putting on clothes, out of the blue. She was saying it to me, but I didn't know her intent. Sometimes it's a word I said, but most of the time I cannot see a clear antecedent. Do I completely ignore these and carry on? She also ignores people talking to her most of the time. I try to make her respond no matter what, but lots of attempts to interact from other adults go without her responding. How can I help her use her words to communicate? She's mastered the I want requests already. Thank you again for your great show. Amazing.
Yeah, that's your child is 2.5. I really, really want to encourage you to get into an intensive ABA program. You can turn things around. It sounds like this is a very smart child who's learning pretty rapidly. There's a few things I want to say here. This use of words out of context. Yeah, you have to ignore them because you don't know what else to do with them. You have to ignore the words out of context. Eventually, you'll get to a point where you'll kind of know where they're coming from. And when you know where they're coming from, try to teach her how to introduce them. So in other words, in this example, baby putting on clothes, something that would have made the whole interaction appropriate would be if she said something like, when I was watching such and such show, I saw a baby putting on clothes, or cutting food reminds me of that show where the baby was putting on clothes, or something like that. So our kids often say things that they're reminded of somehow, but they don't introduce it appropriately. And who knows, she may be over-selecting to something. In other words, she may have seen some other thing, movie, book, picture, where there is a baby putting on clothes, and in the background there's fruit, or there's something that's being cut. So something triggered her to say that, but we can't identify what it is yet. Now, so therefore, for the time being, just ignore it and move on. But your child is like, I know children like this, and this is the child who needs to get into therapy immediately, because she's learning language, and this is the most important time where you can shape all of her language. She has started to mend. That's the requesting I want things, and that's fabulous. There's a million other things you have to do. So next step would be for her to start tacting, which is identifying objects, just labeling objects. Then you go into interverbals, where you're basically teaching interactive communication, or communication that goes back and forth and answers questions about things that are present, aren't present. Please, if you are not you're outside the US, if you cannot find an ABA program, this is what you do. You will go to two sites. First of all, you will go to the IBT site, Institute for Behavioral Training, right? Institute for Behavioral Training. And the site...
.com.
Yeah, the website is...
ibehavioraltraining.com.
ibehavioraltraining.com. Go there, start going through those modules, and learn ABA. Learn every step of ABA that you can. In fact, hire 3 people, let's say, who are college students, or even just out of high school. Just anyone, your neighbors can help, friends, family, whatever. But commit them to a certain number of hours. The younger, the better, because this takes a lot of energy. Have them go through the IBT modules with you, so that they learn exactly how to implement, how to teach using ABA techniques. Okay, they're going through the modules, they're learning, they're becoming good therapists, and they're each going to work maybe 7 to 10 hours with your child, so that your child ends up getting actually close to 40 hours of sit-down, one-to-one direct therapy. Your child's very young and should be getting strong, really good ABA discrete trial therapy right now. That's the tech that takes care of the team and the how-to. Now the what to teach, the content, the curriculum. Your second website is skillsforautism.com. Please go on Skills. Put in your child's demographics, your age, and so on. Answer some questions about your child. It'll take you a while to answer the questions. There's a lot of questions, so be prepared to spend several sessions, several 2-hour, 1-hour time frames, whenever you have time, but it'll take you maybe a week to answer all the questions. Once you've done that, Skills will generate a profile for your child, which will show everything that your child needs to learn. And everything that your child needs to learn will be presented to you in this huge, let's say, supermarket of lessons. Hundreds of lessons, but each lesson will be very specifically written out for you. So it won't just be, where do I go next? You'll get a whole array of things that you need to be teaching your child. Once you get that whole group, you go to the youngest thing. So those skills that are falling behind the most will be the things that a typical 1-year-old can do, or maybe a 2-year-old can do. Your child's already 2.5, so you want to catch those things up first. And then you put together a program for your child. You basically put together a notebook, and the notebook will have sections. The first section will be the first lesson. So let's say you'll have 2 or 3 lessons that work on just your child's language. And then you'll have maybe 1 or 2 lessons that work on social behavior, and maybe 1 or 2 lessons that work on self-help, adaptive skills, taking care of the child learning to take care of his or her own needs. And so you'll take from each area of Skills. Skills has 8 areas. Some of the areas won't pertain to you yet because your child's too young. the executive functioning skills generally don't start to develop until about a little bit later. Some of the basic ones do develop at 1, but the majority of the EF, the executive functioning curriculum, comes into play around 4 or 5. So you'll be focused more on things like language, play, some social, a lot of adaptive, maybe if your child has motor deficits, you'll be working on those. And so you'll have, at any given time in a 40-hour program, you'll have somewhere between 20 to 30 different lessons that your child's working on, all using the same techniques of ABA. And this is extremely important because these skills have to come in together for the child to use them. If you just teach imitation or words, they're not functional, they're not useful, and the child won't know why am I learning all this stuff. But if you use them while you're learning, then they all kind of make sense to the child at the same time. Now, if all of this is what I just said is extremely difficult to do, just call CARD, call us. We provide supervision to families all over the world, and all you need really is a supervisor who can guide you through all this process that I said. And also, we have our supervisors fly everywhere. I mean, we have international sites, but we also have a whole team called remote services, and what they do is they go to your home and they will train the people that you hire and will teach them and will oversee them. We'll write the program out for your child. We will oversee the program, change it every week, every month as we need to progress the child accordingly.
And two things I want to add. Because so many people have asked for help with skills from a parent's point of view. Last week I went through just the 8 curricula areas on the show on Thursday, and tomorrow at 10:20 on the show we're going through the parents' tips on how to get through the assessment and have it be fun.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And,
thank you.
So that it's useful to you. So we're doing that tomorrow at 10:20. And the other thing that I want to say to you is, with love and with a hug, is that you're in a moment in time right now.
Yeah.
In a big moment in time, and you probably feel like you can't breathe, having heard all of that, and it feels like Mount Everest.
So much, yeah.
But I want you to, instead of saying, there's no way that I can do that, ask yourself, what if I do this? What if I do this? How will my life change? How will her life change? And we all face this moment. I think if you're an autism parent, that moment comes like once a month,
right,
where you think, I can't do it, I can't do it. And then you have to think, okay, what if? What if there were a way? And I would ask you to be in that headspace and put everything else to the side, as if your kitchen is on fire. That's the expression that we use here. Your kitchen is on fire. Put your time and your energy into that, because you will have amazing things happen if you do. And you will never look back. You will never regret it if you take the advice that Dr. Granpeesheh just gave you. Okay, so we had a question come in this morning, and it's a long question because it's in 2 parts. She says, hello, ladies. Well, we finally made it. We officially started with CARD in January at the Phoenix location. We moved from Pennsylvania to Arizona in order to get the kind of high-quality ABA therapy that CARD provides. Woohoo! Now, she says, sadly, we are truly off to a rough start. Our BCBA/case manager is leaving CARD after being with the company only 8 months. We will thankfully have the district manager, Ben, overseeing our case until he can find us a replacement. I know that he will have to work remotely from Texas. I have no doubt he is exceptional. He is. I guess my husband and I want to write in for a little reassurance that we are still in the right place for our son. I was told today when I asked to schedule a future meeting with Dr. Granpeesheh that she doesn't see kiddos. Is this the case? You are truly a hero to us parents. I would love for you to meet our son, no matter how long the wait. Please let me know if this is possible. God bless. And they put their name. Now, there's a second part of that, but do you want to start this?
That first part, okay. Yeah, so unfortunately, and I think we had told this family already that it was a rough time in Arizona, but actually right now things are really good in Arizona. So I think I know the person that is leaving, and I'm not at all concerned for you at all, because we have currently, I believe, 4 BCBAs who are in training as case managers. At CARD, when a BCBA comes to us, we put them in still another like 6 months of training, whereas most other agencies probably won't do that. But regardless, don't be worried at all. First of all, Ben is one of the most incredible supervisors. You will love working with Ben. He's not just remote. He comes back and forth to Arizona every month, and he spends quite a bit of time there. We will start to actually reduce his time in a couple of months because we also have a really, really experienced PhD BCBA who is moving to Arizona. So we're not at all concerned. There's a lot of good stuff actually happening in Arizona right now. We have several BCBAs who are going through training for Arizona for both Chandler and Phoenix sites. As I said, this PhD is about to transfer and has tons of experience. So we're going to have that strength there as well. And on top of that, our Arizona school is starting right now, I believe. We're signing kids up for our CARD Academy.
I believe it's the actual start date because
it was next week or something.
It's next week.
Yeah. So we have a lot of good stuff.
Enrollment is now.
Yeah, we have a lot of supports coming into Arizona right now. You know, our clinical director, Evelyn Kong, comes regularly to see kids there. Jennifer Yakos, who is one of our senior trainers, is licensed and comes to Arizona very frequently and sees children there as well. And now we have Marianne Cassell, who is also a senior at CARD and is the head of all of our CARD academies, all the schools, also is now coming to Arizona. So Arizona actually, because of my concern about 6 months or a year ago, now has a tremendous team of senior Cardians coming. And senior Cardians, you have to realize, are people who've been here for almost 20 years or more than 20 years. So they're very, very experienced. So please don't worry about the person who's leaving, and I assure you, you'll be fine. Now, I do see kids, so thank you for bringing that to my attention. And Shannon, if you could forward their email to me, yes, because I'd like to directly make sure that...
I don't have email, but I have the name of the child.
I just want to be reminded,
yes,
about this so that I can reach out to the Arizona office and say, hey, I do see kids. I love to see kids. I probably won't this year be able to see kids in Arizona because it's our 25th anniversary and I'm traveling to so many sites. But I will see you if you come to California. I'm happy to. I love seeing kids here in LA. So please, if you're interested in that, here, I'll just tell you right now, just call CARD headquarters and schedule that with my assistant. So just say I'd like to get an appointment for Dr. Granpeesheh, and that's it at the 800 number for CARD headquarters, and we will do that. That's that. So I answered that part. The second part.
Second part. They go on to say. I'd already scrolled down. Sorry. Just a few additional questions. I found out that the Chandler Phoenix office doesn't have cameras installed. Is this something that will happen in the near future for training and educational purposes? I like to know my child's case manager can check on him from time to time, especially since our new case manager is working remotely from another state. Additionally, the CARD and the Chandler and Phoenix office doesn't use skills to collect data while in session. They convert the data later, and I have noticed a huge delay with the data being converted. I was informed that some locations have the ability to take data electronically and convert it to skills immediately, but they don't have it yet. Is this something that will be added in the near future? Thank you guys again for all that you do. Shannon and Dr. Granpeesheh, you are amazing. Even though we have never met, I feel like you are my closest friends. And they said regards and best wishes.
You're wonderful, and I really look forward to meeting you, and thank you so much. I am not sure why on your case there's no electronic data collection. It surprises me, but I will now certainly look into it. All of our offices have been on the iPads and electronic data collection for at least a year now. So I am not sure why there would be actual written data and then transferred to skills. I'm not sure, but we all of our offices use iPads, and the iPads have the data collection system, and all of that streams automatically into skills, and that's been in place for quite a while. So I will now need to look and see whether your supervisor, for some particular reason, wasn't yet doing that. I'm not sure what's going on there. I will find out. Cameras, because every therapist has an iPad now, we use a lot of FaceTime. We don't really, you're going to new physical location. We've had a location in Phoenix for a long time, for many years, but both of those offices are new. We just moved into them in the last 6 months. And I'm not sure we will be putting cameras in because the ability to see the child and the child's therapists is now so easy for us, given the fact that all of the iPads have cameras. And what we generally do is, even if we are taking data on the iPad, you can still activate the camera and place it so that Ben or whoever else is overseeing your child's program can see ongoing sessions. So that shouldn't be a problem. I don't know, that is possibly the reason we're not putting cameras into the new locations, because we have cameras in our technology accessible to us all the time, and FaceTime is more secure or HIPAA compliant than, let's say, Skype or physical cameras.
Okay.
So the whole FaceTime thing just makes it a lot easier for us now.
Okay. So,
but please do stay in contact with me. It sounds like you need a little bit of reassurance, and I'm happy to communicate with you directly. And if you'd like to share your information, or if you already have with Shannon, Shannon will forward it to me, and I'd love to stay in contact.
And you can always email me at s.penrod@autism-live.com. That goes for everybody. Sometimes when you have a longer question, I know you had to put your question in 2 parts, feel free to email me. I want to go back to a question that came in last night. Hi, I would love some advice. My adult daughter is using way, all in capital, way too much toilet paper when she uses the bathroom. She can use a whole jumbo roll in one day. Maybe it's related to her OCD, ? She is also overweight. I've tried only giving her a limited amount, but she gets very upset and will bring tissues from her room into the bathroom. She is not diagnosed with any medical related problems, and please help, !
Right. Well, first of all, you and her need to agree on an amount that is appropriate. I would probably, if she's OCD, she's going to love counting the actual tissues. So I would probably say you need to get her to accept X number of tissues per wipe. Let's say reasonably. So here's how you do it. You look at how much she does now, and you reduce it by 1.
Okay.
So if she's using, let's say, 20 tissues, a whole strip would be 20 tissues, right? Each time she wipes, then you will say to her, we're going to make it 19. Okay, and then let her be okay with that.
Okay.
And the way that you do it is you actually will ask her to count out 19, tear it off and put it in strips rather than have it on a roll initially. Okay. And then you'll make it 18, 17, 16. Let's say you get to a point where you're at 5 and now you're comfortable with that, and she's comfortable with that, and she sees that things are still clean.
Right.
And then now you're at a point where you can just leave it on the roll. Now you're at the next step, and now she will count as she pulls off the roll. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, tear and wipe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, tear and wipe, and then that'll become natural behavior for her. Okay. If she's OCD, you realize that the reason she's doing this is because she doesn't feel it's clean enough. So another thing that might help is if you were able to buy her wet wipes, that generally would maybe make her feel clean enough. And if none of this, if she still has a really, really hard time transitioning down gradually from, let's say, 20 to 18 to 16 and so on, which, could take a few weeks, but if she still really has a hard time with that, then you really might need some professional help, because this is very doable. Don't worry. It's teachable. I could do this easily, but obsessive compulsive behavior is done, the compulsion is done because we have so much anxiety. And in her case, it's anxiety about being dirty, and she just doesn't feel clean enough unless she uses all this tissue to wipe, or perhaps like the anxiety is about getting it on her hands. whatever the underlying anxiety is, that is what needs to be dealt with. And, you know, I don't know that you're in a place to necessarily deal with that. So if you work on this, she might cope with this, but she might also need to then replace it with other rituals which will help her reduce her anxiety. So it is kind of important to know the cause of OCD and to deal with it.
Okay, really good advice. Moving on, somebody wrote in and said, hello and good morning. My son had a terrible incident while shopping with his dad. And she notes that she and dad are divorced, which sometimes makes, you know, interventions harder. He saw a DVD he wanted to buy and his dad said no. My teenage son started hitting himself in the head and caused quite the scene. He's okay. And she puts in capital letters, I do not want this to happen again. Would it work if he had my son write down the title of the DVD he'd like to buy and I can take him to buy it another day? Or would something else be better? I really appreciate your wisdom.
So if your son writes it down or even tells you and you go to buy it another day, he will have what you've taught him is that we freak out when you have a major tantrum and we end up giving in because it freaks us out, it scares us, and we don't want it to happen again, so we're going to give in to you. I don't think that's what you want, because it will happen again. He will want something again that you're not able to give him or able to purchase for him. What if he goes to a store tomorrow and says, hey, I actually want that video camera and it's $1,000 and you can't buy it for him? What if he wants something every single time? So it's going to happen, and you don't really want to go there because you will have made that harder. You will have made it much harder for him to understand that he can't have things when he wants them. So what's better to do, I think, is to allow him to earn what is feasible for you to purchase for him. So let's assume it is possible for you to buy him a video once a week. It sounds like, or a DVD. It sounds like a DVD is a good reinforcer for him, and you would like to be able to give that to him once a week. So what you do is maybe you make a little chart that has 7 boxes, and you could make it non-contingent or you could make it contingent. And what that means is that each day that he has a good day, and you can define that however you want. Let's say he does his work, or he does his schoolwork, or he speaks more, or he cleans his plate, or whatever it is. That's a contingent system. If he does that, you put a check mark or a happy face or something in that box for that day. And at the end of the week, he will see, you'll have on the visual, it'll have the 7 boxes, and then you'll have the picture of a video or a DVD. So he'll know that if he gets a check mark every day for 7 days, he'll gonna get that DVD at the end of the week. You could also make it non-contingent, which means every day that passes, he gets a check mark. So you're just accumulating days because you want to buy it for him every 7th day. And then what you do is you do not take him to the store during that period of time. You only take him on the 7th day. On the 7th day, you go and give him the thing, and you make sure he understands that it corresponds to this chart. You earned it, you got it, good job, now we're getting you your thing. Once he has that concept down, which could take a couple of weeks or practice, then you take him, let's say, on the 2nd day, but you take your chart with you and you say, look, we still have, you only got 2, we still have 5 more, and when you get the 5, then you'll get the thing. And if he has a tantrum or something, that's completely fine. Ignore it, don't worry about it, let him have a total meltdown. Don't be afraid of meltdowns. You want to make sure he understands that a meltdown is not going to scare you. You want to make sure he understands that a meltdown is not a good form of communicating with you. And the better way of communicating is saying, can I have something? Now, often our kids will say, can I have something? And we have to say no. But the truth is, it's important to differentiate when you say no. You're not saying no forever. You're just saying no for now. So what you would do is you would say, not right now, you can have it in 5 days. Not right now, you can have it in 4 days, 3 days, whatever it is, and you show him the visual, and that really helps.
Okay.
So make sure, though, you don't just give in because he's had a tantrum.
If I can just say, I think that part of the problem here, too, is that because mom and dad are not together, but even if they were still together, there's that thing of she wasn't there.
Yes.
Dad's there, and it's dad's reaction. And the fact that her child was hitting himself in the head, and that I'm going to guess, as a controlling mom, how devastating it is when you know that this kind of behavior is happening and you're not there and you have no reach to do that. So is there something that she can say to him that will help, or is there something she can do for herself to help herself to not feel the squishing panic of, when I send him with his dad, he might start hitting himself in the head, and how that feels for her?
I get it. But the thing is that as much as it might be hard to accept this, you have to be a team with your ex-spouse right now on this issue, because I don't think your husband did anything wrong. He simply said, no, you can't have it. And honestly, the sooner you allow your son to kind of get over this reaction, the sooner the reaction will stop happening. If it doesn't matter how it occurs. I know it's a scene. I know that it pains you to see him do that. I know that you probably are worried, wondering why he's doing that. But I guarantee you, if you also take him to a store and you say no to something he wants, he'll probably have the same reaction. That reaction is nothing other than, I'm really upset. I really want this. I don't understand why I can't have it right now. And so I'm going to make the biggest scene I possibly can so that you give in. That's what that tantrum is. That's what that tantrum is saying. So if you don't give in, the tantrum won't be effective anymore. And it will stop. I promise you it'll stop, because your son will realize, this is getting me nowhere.
Yeah.
And so, and the idea of writing it down works. But then you'll end up having to buy him something every time he writes something down. And this is a bigger issue. The bigger issue is that your child needs to understand the concept of time. A lot of times I see with my adults, especially, or teenagers, even with our little kids, of course, understanding that you can't have something now versus later is really what causes the frustration. So, hey, if you're in a position where every time he asks nicely, like by writing it down, you're willing to purchase it for him, great. Then sure, have him write it down. He won't tantrum again. But I think you'd probably want to teach him to be able to wait.
Okay. Thank you so much. We're out of time, unfortunately. We have more questions, but we'll hopefully get to some of those tomorrow and next week. But we thank you so much.
It's a pleasure, no problem.
Such a pleasure.
There's
so
a few
enlightening.
of these that I don't want to forget for next time. Like there's one about her daughter not feeling well and not expressing it.
Absolutely. We want to get to that. But, what I would love, if that parent is watching, is some more information about how old.
Absolutely.
That would really be helpful. Okay.